I'm ready to party!
Oh man, me too. Kristen Wiig declaring her hedonistic intentions in the movie Bridesmaids, one of the most memorable comedies of the decade, and you know, it wouldn't exist without Paul Feig. Neither would Freaks and Geeks, and a lot of the best and most talked about comedy around right now. I'll be talking to writer, producer, and director Paul Feig first up today. I'm Tom Power. You're listening to Q.
I mean, really, what do you want? What do you want, gravy on it? That's the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life.
The Barenaked Ladies don't mind if you order the classics, but no, they'll be served a little differently. Canada's cheekiest rock band is collaborating with some new friends. Today you'll hear the Barenaked hits, but with a very fresh twist.
I thought that Madonna was saying that she was a Cheerio girl, and I loved Cheerios. So I was like, me too, Madonna. I love Cheerios as well.
Laura Jane Grace of the band Against Me on why we're all one misheard lyric away from living in a Cheerio world. Believe it or not, the song Material Girl by Madonna was formative for Laura Jane Grace. Today you'll hear how it and others shaped her music and identity. And author Emma Donoghue. Not only is she game for a good writing challenge, Emma's writing often deals with heady adult issues, and that hasn't changed, even though she's just written her first children's book. All this in a special performance by Hall of Fame inductees 5440 today on Q. Have you ever heard a joke that just stuck with you? That maybe you were watching Saturday Night Live or missed a show, then someone says something so funny and you just can't stop quoting it. You repeat it over and over again with your friends, like some sort of secret password.
Could have used a little more cowbell.
These are the types of comedies Paul Feig makes, ones that stick with you. He's a writer, producer, and director who's worked with today's biggest sketch comics. I'm talking about talents like Leslie Jones and Kristen Wiig, and Melissa McCarthy, and Kate McKinnon. He's also the director behind movies like Bridesmaids and Ghostbusters, The Heat and Spy. Basically, Paul Feig has had a hand in some of the best comedy around. And recently, he joined me in our Q studio. Hi, Paul. You're dressed so much better than I am. I'm here in this T-shirt.
Come on, this is radio. You could be wearing a tuxedo right now.
Right.
Don't give yourself up.
But I appreciate the three-piece. It's
Yeah, you know.
You look great.
My uniform.
What is your all-time favorite sketch?
Oh gosh, it was from an SNL episode. It was Kristen Wiig and Tracy Morgan, and it was called Rocket Dog. I think it was called Rocket, and it was about. But he was this producer who had made this movie called Rocket Dog, and so they kept showing clips. But at the end of every clip, there was an in memoriam reel of the people that were in the thing, and you just kept learning more and more people died when they made this movie. And it's the funniest sketch I think ever. Second only to there's a Monty Python sketch where they're on a lifeboat. But they have to keep restarting it because people keep messing up their lines, and then it's about how they're going to have to eat somebody's leg because they have no food. But then the end, they're like, "Oh, good, we're going to eat his leg. Oh, we can have all these vegetables with it," and they have all these canned vegetables underneath. So,
but like,
I love that stuff.
As a comedy director, do you think you have a different perspective on what makes a sketch work? Are you able to watch the SNL and go, I get what they did there?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's different. All comedy has its own kind of structure, and movies have a very specific structure. And then sketches have various structures that work, and there's, some that are kind of the structure of repetition. Those are, can be funny sometimes. The kind of same thing keeps happening. It just gets more absurd the more you hear it. Then there's my favorite ones are the ones that kind of start going one way and then they fold in on themselves, and by the end they almost negate what they were about. That lifeboat one being the perfect example. It's all about like we have no food, we have to eat this guy, and it turns out it's all about just wanting to eat a guy's leg, and they actually had food. So I find that very anarchistic and funny.
Last night I found myself on YouTube preparing for this, watching some of my favorite sketches, and I watched Toonces the Cat Who Could Drive a Car.
Always funny.
About 11 times, and it's funny. every single time. And there's something about that repetition. There's something about you kind of know what's going to happen,
Right.
and there's no way out of it. But that's still funny for some reason.
Yeah, because you just love what you know they're going to go off a cliff at some point. You know something's going to go terribly wrong. No, I love that stuff. Yeah, they're just talking about funny stuff. Like, did you see Anchorman 2?
Yeah.
Just the comedy of inevitability is so funny because when they're in that RV and it's driving and you realize that Paul Rudd isn't driving it anymore because it's on autopilot. But what they set up is somebody's got a deep fryer and they've got like a pile of bowling balls. and so you just know it's coming. And that's what's so funny too is just like, okay, so eventually, and then the payoff is so funny because all this slow motion of them getting hit with bowling balls, burning fryer oil on themselves.
But I'm thinking about like a lot of the actors that you have worked with in your films have a sketch background. They started out at Second City or they started out in improv in some kind of way. Yeah. Especially when it comes to The Heat, especially when it comes to Ghostbusters and Bridesmaids. What is it about sketch comedians that makes them special to you?
Well, because they're well-versed in improv, and the best ones are great actors, but they're also able to think on their feet. And when you do improv and sketch comedy, you have to establish a personality very quickly, and you have to bring something extra to a character, because sketch comedy is very much like it's like a concentrate, like comedy concentrate.
Right.
So you have to have characters that really make a statement that are extreme characters sometimes, but they still have to be believable.
I want to touch a little bit on work you did about 15 years ago. You created the show called Freaks and Geeks, which is, at least to me, an incredibly important show, and I think to a lot of people, a very important show. Judd Apatow was the executive producer. I think I've watched it 5 or 6 times, at least. But it was also a major change in your career. I was looking at your IMDb, and it's a lot of acting roles up until Freaks and Geeks, and then it feels like the column changes. It goes from Paul Feig actor to Paul Feig director, writer. What changed with Freaks and Geeks?
Well, that was the major turning point, because I was an actor. I was on all these, I did really well. I was a character actor, made my living, really good living at it for about 15 years, and I would always be like the 6th or 7th lead on like a network TV show, but it would always get canceled after the first season. And this happened with 4 other series, and then so the 5th series, I finally got on this thing called Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Yeah, where I played Mr. Poole, the science teacher, and finally it was a hit show. So I was like, finally, as an actor, you just want to be taken care of.
Sorry, I just put that together too.
Yeah,
as someone who watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Well, there you go.
I think I just put that together.
Here I am.
I don't think I can continue on. I think
Mr. Poole.
I'm a little
mitosis is, and that's what one of my catchphrases on
I'm
there.
a little intimidated right now.
Yeah, you should be.
So anyway, go on. Sorry, I hate to say. So you do Sabrina, and then
so I did that, and then I wrote this movie, low budget movie, that I said I'm going to take my money for my first year of working on Sabrina. I'm going to put it all into this movie, and so made this $30,000 film that I wrote here in Toronto. By the way, I wrote it when I was staying at Bruce McCullough's house, and I wrote this movie, and shot it. And was very excited about it. And then as I was editing it, I got a call from the showrunner of Sabrina saying that they were basically firing me from the show, writing me out. So then, but I knew I'd been wanting to make the transition. I always wanted to be Woody Allen, so I wanted to write, direct, and star in my own things. And I went to USC Film School. So I was always angling to become a director too, but this kicked me out of the nest.
Right.
And so when I was out on the road trying to promote this movie for a year and trying to get it into festivals, I wrote Freaks and Geeks just as a spec script. Normally back then you'd sell an idea to a network, and then you'd do development where they'd give you notes, and it would do this process. It would water it down. So I just wrote this as a spec thing, and then sold it, and we got it made. And that was when I said, okay, I'm done with acting. I'm going to do this now.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I just in talking about Freaks and Geeks, I mentioned that it's this crazy important show to me, and I think to a lot of people like me, it's a very, very important show. And again, if you haven't seen it, I think it's on Netflix. You can you can watch it. But
you can stream it.
But were you surprised years later when it became this touchstone, when it became this incredibly important show to a lot of people?
I was thrilled. I mean, that's any project you do, you hope it will live on. But this was always the thing about television is if you weren't a hit, especially back then, you would go away, because they weren't even bringing out shows on DVD. Once the show was gone, it was gone. And then basically for 4 years, it was that kind of thing where you go yeah, hey, I heard that show was really good, and nobody sees it. It wasn't until we got it on DVD 4 years later, which we could have done earlier, but everybody who wanted to put it out didn't want to pay for the music rights. So they wanted
Right, there's incredible music in it.
Yeah, and they want to replace the music, and it's like, you can't do that. The music, the songs are as important to these stories as the characters are. So finally, Shout Factory stepped up and paid for the music, and then it's so great that now it kind of lives on.
Earlier, we were talking about working with Melissa McCarthy. A lot of your projects have been made with her. You think about The Heat, Bridesmaids, Spy, Ghostbusters. You know, what is it about her that makes you want to work with her so much?
We just have the same sense of humor, and we have the same
What do you
kind
mean?
of. It's well, you know, there's a million different senses of humor. Some people like something really broad. Some people like something really subtle. Some people like something dirty. Whatever. We are united in the fact that we like very character-based comedy in which the characters are real, but they can be pushed to the extreme.
Right.
And so that you can have these absurd type things happening, but you never don't believe it. And we guard each other on that. We're always testing each other on that of like, I don't know if they would do this, I don't know if they would do that. And sometimes we'll even try stuff, and then she knows enough to trust me enough that when we get in the editing room, I'm like, okay, that's too big. We're not going to believe it. Because I'm always trying to avoid that moment when an audience is sitting there and they go, oh, come on. Because then you lose the audience. And we see that happen in comedies all the time, because they go like, well, we got this great joke. We got to keep this great joke. It's like, no, jettison the joke. If it hurts the reality and sudden the audience goes like, well, why are they doing that? But it's a fine line you walk, because if you set up a very extreme character, you know, we have friends who are nuts. But they're real. They're not pretending to be nuts. And occasionally, if you have a friend who you go like, "You're pretending to be nuts," and nobody wants to hang around with them, you know. So I just like that sort of extremeness in comedy.
It's funny that you mentioned, though, character-based, grounded in reality, but can be pushed to an extreme.
Yeah.
Not to be too on the nose here, but it very much describes why Melissa's been successful doing Sean Spicer, doing the, the
Totally.
White House press secretary.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think it is about? As someone, as we said earlier, when you watch Saturday Night Live, you can see things a little bit differently. What is it about her and that sketch that's getting all this attention, that's making it her knock it out of the park?
You know what? That's a kind of a different thing, because that's parodying somebody. There you go.
Yeah,
Like I could have said it.
Thanks a lot for coming in. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, it's great.
Yeah.
This was great, gang, everybody. No, that is the perfect example of. I've said this to Lauren, everybody. I said, you hit the most cathartic comedy moment anybody could have hit ever, because it was right when we were all just like feeling so powerless from this insanity that was going on with Trump and all this gang, and then that Spicer, you know, ridiculous press conference. And so we were just kind of, everybody was like, what do we do? What do we do? We know something's crazy. And her coming out and doing that, you just felt the whole country go like, oh, yes, because it just was pointing to the absurdity so much and then taking it to the next level. And that is a different kind of comedy, because then even though there is, you know, you never don't believe that she is completely committed to being this person, but it just takes ridiculousness that they do and pushed it to the edge. And it was like this just collective breath of relief from the whole country when she did that.
But it's interesting to see some of the backlash. You know, there were reports that within the White House, there were one of the larger issues was that the president had a problem with the fact that Sean Spicer was being portrayed by a woman.
Oh, yeah.
At all. And I know this is something that you faced throughout your career, obviously through the Ghostbusters Backlash. Does that kind of vitriol, that kind of backlash surprise you anymore?
It sadly doesn't surprise me anymore, and I hate that it doesn't surprise me, because when I started Ghostbusters, you know, I went into that sort of like, you know, look, I do these movies with these funny women, and people really love them. And, you know, even though you get on the press tour and it's always like, so women can be funny, which is, you know.
I can't believe that's still a question.
Can't keep asking that question. But, you know, I really went into, get that off your sheet.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, so I went into Ghostbusters. I remember I sent that tweet out. I was so happy because I made this. I know how to do it, because they wanted me to do a Ghostbusters stuff. I can do is all women. That'll be fun, and I know all these amazing women. So I put out this tweet like, you know, I'm rebooting Ghostbusters, and it's gonna be all hilarious women. That's what I'm gonna call. And just like, oh, who's not gonna be happy about this? And the first wave, the first day, it was just like so happy and all these wonderful tweets. But then the next day, suddenly it trickled out through Breitbart and whoever else disseminates all this stuff, and so then you go, oh my God, and this wave of venom that came in. They were hoping that Katie Dippold and I were going to die, I mean, under a bus and taste our own blood. And, you know, and look, yes, there were people that just like, don't touch a classic, but there was also so much that was just very misogynistic. And, you know, there's no getting around that. And that's when you suddenly go like, oh gosh, I thought we were way more advanced than this.
We have about a minute left. You're here for the Toronto Sketch Fest, and sketch comedy is fun as entertainment. But what you're seeing, as you said, with cathartic comedy, with Melissa McCarthy's portrayal of Sean Spicer, a lot of the sketches that are going up right now. I'm interested in ending. And what do you think sketch comedy's purpose is going forward? Like, why do you think we need sketch comedy to go on?
I mean, there's so many different reasons. I mean, obviously, for political reasons, it's great to just kind of shine a light through that. But I just think, again, it's the perfect way to sort of comment on the human condition and everything we're going through. It is this distillation of absurdity that we face in our life, or just things that we're going through, and it's an illustration of it to go like, oh God, that's such a funny way to look at things I'm having an issue with or things I'm not happy with, and I mean, I think catharsis is a good term for comedy in general. It's very therapeutic if it's done right.
Paul Feig, thanks so much for coming in today.
Tom, thank you. You're the best.
It's been a pleasure, man. Do you recognize that? That's Ocean Pearl by Vancouver's 5440. I have to say, hands down, my favorite 5440 song. The thing is, there's no shortage of 5440 songs to choose from over their past 4 decades as a band. They were just honored by 2 musical halls of fame, one for the Independent Music Awards, the other for the Canadian Music and Broadcast Industry Awards. I should say also entered into my Cassette Jacket Hall of Fame a few years ago. Here's 5440 performing their famously covered hit, See You Later, Hootie. This is I Go Blind in Studio Q.
Every time I look at you, I go blind. Every time I look at you, I go blind. And every time I look at you, I go blind. Every time I look at you, I go blind. In the morning I get up and I try to feel alive, but I can't. Every time I look at you, I go blind. I don't know what it is, something in me, it just won't give it a chance. No way. I think it's that I feel more confused by the deal that love has shown me. Little child, did you know that there's a light, and it's gonna shine right through your eyes? What do you think that life is like? Every time I look at you, I go blind. I go blind, yeah. Somewhere over there, there's a purpose, there's a carefree. In me, there's nobody, no one planned, and no one stand to be free. I think it's that because I have seen all the fuss, and it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Well, now hold me, 'cause I wanna get high and higher. Hold me, 'cause I wanna get high and higher. Higher than every time I look at you, I go blind.
Still to come on Q, Laura Jane Grace sits down with me to revisit some of her early musical influences. But first, we got a performance and a chat with Barenaked Ladies and the Persuasions on their sonic collaboration.
What's a hoodwink? Does it make you stop, think? You'll think you're looking at Aquaman. I summon fish to the dish, although I like the chalet Swiss. I like the sushi, 'cause it's never touched a frying pan.
When you're around something a long time, it can be easy to take it for granted. But then, if you're lucky, before you throw it out, someone else takes notice of it, and then they put that thing in a new light. That is what happened to these guys. Barenaked Ladies are used to playing their most popular songs over and over again, but then they met the legendary Brooklyn a cappella group The Persuasions, and all of a sudden everything just felt new. And the two bands, Barenaked Ladies and this legendary a cappella group The Persuasions, have a joint album together now. You're about to hear a great performance, as well as the story of how this kind of unlikely collaboration began. Spoiler alert, like most good things in life, it involves Lou Reed. Check it out.
Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So from what I understand, the seeds of this collaboration were kind of sown at Lou Reed's memorial in 2013. Is that right, Kevin?
That's correct.
What's the story there?
The story is, well, I worked with Lou for years as his touring band leader, and Lou was a huge fan of doo-wop. And back in the 70s, he had the Persuasions opening his shows on his tours. And so at Lou's memorial at the Apollo Theater, the Persuasions sang a version of his song Turning Time Around, and I performed a song as well, and that's where we met.
Jimmy, what do you remember about those shows with Lou Reed? I didn't know that you had opened up those gigs.
Man, it was great. Lou was the first artist that took us to Europe. We went over and toured about 20 cities in the UK. And we just had a ball on the bus every day, going from here to playing blackjack. It was great, man. Lou was a great guy.
You guys played blackjack on the bus?
Yeah.
We play euchre on the bus. Yeah. Do you know that game?
Broke into the old apartment. This is where we used to live. Broken glass, broken hungry, broken hearts and broken bones. This is where we used to live. Why did you paint the walls? Why did you clean the floors? Why did you plaster over the hole I punched in the door? This is where we used to live. Why did you keep the mousetrap? Why did you keep the dish rack? These things used to be mine. I guess they still are. I want them back. Broke into the old apartment. 42 steps from the street. Crooked landing, crooked landlord, narrow laneway filled with crooks. And this is where we used to live, yeah. And why did they pave the lawn? And why did they change the laws? Oh no. And why did I have to break in? I only came here to talk. This is where we used to live, yeah. And now we've your neighbor downstairs. How is the temper this year? I turned up your TV, stomped on the floor just for fun.
I know we don't live here anymore. We bought an old house on the Danforth. She loves me and her body keeps me warm.
And I'm happy here, 'cause this is where we used to live. I broke into the old apartment, yeah, and tore the phone out of the wall, yeah, yeah. All the memories, faded memories, blending into a dull tableau. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I want them back. Oh yes, now I want them back. I want them back. Yeah, yeah.
We've got one more song for you from Barenaked Ladies and the Persuasions coming up later in the show. But first, I sit down and talk with Against Me frontwoman Laura Jane Grace to talk about the music that shaped her life and art.
I don't ever wanna talk that way again. I don't wanna know people like that anymore.
Sometimes there's a very strange thing that happens when you get what you want. You realize success, this thing that you craved, isn't what you thought it would be. For musician Laura Jane Grace, this is exactly what happened when her band hit it big. She fronts a very popular band called Against Me, but even with all that success that Laura craved, her life was a living hell. Laura was waging her own private battle. The public knew her as a male singer, but she knew she was a woman. Laura Jane Grace came out as transgender in 2012 in a very public way on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. She has a new memoir out called Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist Sellout. And we wanted to take things back to the music by listening to the songs that she mentions in the book that told her life story. And we started it off in maybe the most unexpected place for a punk rocker. We started with Madonna. How good is that, eh?
Classic.
It's a little Madonna Material Girl for any of the millennials who may not be as familiar with it. Tell me when you first encountered that song.
I was 3 years old and living in Cincinnati, Ohio at the time. And I thought that Madonna was saying that she was a Cheerio girl. And I loved Cheerios. So I was like, me too, Madonna. I love Cheerios as well. Yeah, but I mean, I just like, you know, I remember like just vividly seeing the video for it and then seeing like some kind of televised performance type thing or whatever. It might have been like Top of the Pops or something like that. And just being like, it was so impactful, you know, and that was like my first moment of self-recognition where you like see yourself in somebody or who you'd like to become, you know, of like, I want to do that, you know, like all around, both the confidence she possessed and, you know, and performing and dancing in front of people and like, you know, having that power over an audience and the femininity she embodied too. And that was like also that first moment of like disconnect where I was like, oh, but wait, like I can't.
I can never do that.
And it was just, I mean, that was the moment for me.
And what was it about Madonna? And I think I was just so surprised about hearing the influences in those early days, like Madonna, Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say Against Me style bands. What was it about these groups that really ignited your desire to play rock music?
Well, you know, I would lump Madonna into this too with those other bands like Def Leppard and stuff, where they blurred gender lines. Where Madonna, you know, the person she was, she did not represent the image that had been before that portrayed to me of what a woman should be in society. You know, she was like the opposite of that. She was like, take no shit, like up there and doing her thing. And, you know, with Def Leppard, a lot of it was like, just picking cool looking album covers too. Then of like, okay, you know, like Def Leppard Hysteria, that's an amazing looking album cover. And, you know, I grew up an Army brat, so overseas I didn't have MTV. I was just like, okay, that looks cool, and reading Hit Parade or magazine. But it was like, you know, looking at all those metal bands or the hair bands, like I couldn't tell if they were boys or girls. I'd look at pictures of Poison and think, they're so pretty, you know, like I want to be them when I grow up. Right. So that was like a part of the allure. And then the attitude, you know, the anti-authority attitude. And then Guns N' Roses like had that edge that was like that much further taking, I mean, like, you know, the world of I'm on a night train compared to Pour Some Sugar on Me was like, you know, night and day.
Let's do another song.
All right.
So you got into an entirely different brand of music away from Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses and Madonna, thanks to bands like this one.
I'll sit around and watch the tube, but nothing's on. I change the channels for an hour or two.
First bass line I ever learned.
Oh yeah. Important bass line. Could you still play it?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Give me a bass.
The only thing we don't have. Put on the mandolin.
That is Longview by Green Day, a song that launched probably thousands of punk bands. In some ways, that includes Against Me. The leader of Against Me, Laura Jane Grace, is with me. We're playing some songs that relate to her story. What role did Green Day play in your story?
Very first concert I ever went to. Not just punk show, just very first concert I ever went to.
That's really cool.
That's
a cool first concert.
Yeah, it was like right as Dookie was blowing up, and I was like, I think 13, 14 years old, and I vividly remember sitting there next to him and being like, let's start our own punk band.
So yeah, what was that turning point? What is that moment where you went like, yeah, I want to do that?
I mean, that was the turning point, was seeing Green Day. No
What was
joke.
it about them? What was it?
I mean, it was accessible in that way, and a lot of it was that the songs are simple. You know, like there's 3 chords in that chorus, and so we could play them. They're power chords, you know, and it just like the whole scene that it was about, it was so anti anything that all those other bands had been about in our eyes, where it was like, wasn't about being on MTV, it wasn't about record labels, it was like, do it yourself, you know, like just start your own band, start your own label, put out your own records. Like if there's no other scene, create a scene. And like everything that was happening with the Bay Area punk scene was just super impactful on me and my friends at that time, for sure.
We're going to play another song, and this is the final track off of New Wave. I want to play a short clip from it. Just take a listen to this.
If I could have chosen, I would have been born a woman. My mother once told me she would have named me Laura. I'd grow up to be strong and beautiful like her. One day I'd find an honest man to make my husband. We would have 2 children.
It's Against Me with The Ocean. Laura, in incredibly clear way, you spell out who you truly are. Like, if I could have chosen, I would have been born a woman. My mother once told me she would have named me Laura. This was written years before you would live openly as a woman.
There's no metaphor there. There's like 0 metaphor in those lyrics.
Do you still sing it?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. And how does it feel to sing it now?
It feels very empowering now. It feels really validating now, too, because that song in particular, you know, we had to fight even to get it on as the last song on the record.
Why?
The label didn't like it. I mean, there's no chorus to the song. It's just 2 verses and then like a weird outro. You know, it's not structurally a song that a record label wants you to have on the record. The lyrics are kind of weird per se. I mean, I listen to that, especially with a pair of cans on, and I'm like transported to being in the vocal booth and singing that lyric and stopping and being like, does anyone in there think that sounds a little weird?
or does anyone in there... Is anyone in there guessing what I'm talking about?
Right, just looking for some kind of reaction.
And not to be rude, but there's a part of me that was going like to the guys in the band, say like, didn't you guys start asking some questions around then? Like, just make sure you were okay and question that lyric a little bit?
Sure. And no one did. And that would kind of like even further spiraled me of feeling like,
what do you mean?
Like no one did. Everyone was just like, yeah, it's cool. Go with it. You know, and like then no further questioning, no further like nothing discussion around it, you know? And it like left me feeling like, oh, is anybody even like paying attention to what I'm singing?
Right.
Like, or can I just say anything up here?
When you ultimately make the decision to reveal the secret again that you've been hiding in plain sight, were you able to go like, see? I told you.
Well, I mean, I wasn't like so smug as to actually.
Well, not like that. See, you know what I mean? There, you know.
Right. I told you. No, but I know that like from talking to people, like many friends did have that aha moment. You know, especially even my band when I came out to them. Like the studio that we were recording at was like an hour drive from everybody's home or whatever. And I know that James said like on that ride home that day, he was like sitting in the car being like, oh, and like a lot of the things that, you know, had been triggering things for me along the way when like band relationship dynamics, you know, outside of lyrics or anything like that, where other people would never understand why I was upset with something, all of a sudden made sense to them. Like an example of being like Andrew, who used to play bass in the band before going on stage, would, you know, slap us all in the back and be like, all right, boys, let's go out and do this. And like every time it would just be like, okay. You know, like I can't say anything to him because then I have to explain myself, but I'm going to be upset by this and it's going to ruin my show.
And I mean this with the utmost of sensitivity because speaking about interviews that you've done 1,000,000 times, you've also been asked this one 1,000,000 times. But I do want to ask this for people who are listening. And if you don't mind, when was the moment? Why did you decide to reveal this about yourself?
There's multiple reasons, or there was lots of things that built up to it, and it was really reaching a point of having gone through the whole major label roller coaster, having gone through a lawsuit with like an ex-manager, having the band fall apart in the process, and like feeling like there was nothing true left. It ironically churned my dysphoria into a source of empowerment, where it was like, this is one thing I know to be true that no one else knows. And in this weird way became like an edge and like this like, this like ace card that I had of like, you don't know this about me. And like, this is my thing that I actually have that you can't take away from me. And so it just reached a point of like, of abandon, of like, either I'm going to move forward and I'm going to accept this about myself, or I'm going to kill myself. And I took a year of like, after we got out of the major label deal, of like, all right, I've been struggling with this, and like having a kid played into it, being married, all those trappings of, of feeling like, okay, on paper, this is everything, like I have a house, I have 2 cars, I have a kid, I have a wife, like I have a band, and we had success, like things might not be that great right now, but I should have it all. I should be enough, but it's not enough. It's never going to be enough because this. And if I don't accept this, then I'm going to die. I'm just going to keep drinking. I'll keep doing drugs, and it'll kill me, So it was reaching that point of abandon, of like, I have nothing to lose.
Laura, it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
This has been a lot of fun.
When Q continues, Barenaked Ladies and the Persuasions have more music for you. But first, I talked to author Emma Donoghue about her latest novel, The Lotteries Plus One. Only a few months ago, it felt like writer Emma Donoghue had her path set out for her. The success of her novel Room made her a big name in adult fiction, especially in Canada. But now Emma Donoghue is putting out her very first children's book. The Lotteries Plus One is about a diverse family of 11 living in Toronto's West End in a neighborhood called Parkdale. There's a great backstory to this book. It was partly inspired by a dare at a dinner party one night. Check this out. This is my conversation with Emma Donoghue. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Why did you want to make the shift to write some younger framed work?
Well, my kids were 7 and 3 at the time. They're 13 and 9 now, so this is 6 years back. So I was immersed in children's writing anyway. I was having to read all these books to my kids, and I so vividly felt the difference between the really enjoyable ones and the deadly ones. So I think it happened quite naturally then that I got an idea for a book about a family, and I thought, well, this could be some of the pleasures of nostalgia. I was the youngest of 8 myself back in Ireland, and it could also be the pleasure of a sort of wishful thinking scenario for me, because I only have a very bourgeois family, 2 mothers, 2 children, London, Ontario. We used daycare, we sent the kids to regular school.
Right.
But I thought, what if I write about a much wackier, bigger family where they are homeschooling them, there's 7 kids, there's 4 parents, all bigger and more exotic than what I'm doing.
But tell me about that germ of the idea, because I know most people listening to this right now will know you for Room, and that story was about a kidnapped woman and her son forced to live in a small room. A very, very dark story. I'll say this, punctuated by moments of light, and I think it gets unfairly depicted as a very, very dark story. But there's some light in that story as well.
Even a few laughs.
Even a laugh or two. This is a very joyful book. This is
It's true, and this is set in a 32-room house, a ramshackle mansion in Parkdale.
But,
yes.
But I have a couple of questions about that. One, what was this germ of an idea? Where did that come from that made you want to...
I'm going to sound shallow, Tom, but it was at a dinner party.
Now that's bourgeois. Yeah.
I know. Myself and partner and kids, we were having dinner with friends one long New Year's Eve, and the friend said to me, write us a book about, kids with two mothers where it's no big deal. And I thought, well, yeah, that's worthy, but it's not that exciting. And I thought, what else could be in that book?
Right.
What else could I throw into the mix? So I decided to make it a much more big and complicated family, and to set that family the challenge of having to take in a complete outsider, right? The grandfather, who has never met all these kids, has to suddenly move in with them because he's becoming confused. So I loved the idea of that culture clash.
I grew up on Roald Dahl.
Yeah.
I grew up reading James and the Giant Peach and the BFG, and I grew up even reading his memoir and stuff. But I know that Roald Dahl used to read his stories to his nephew to see how they went down and to get perspectives from his nephew to put into his books. You have 2 children, like as you mentioned, in the target range for this book.
Yeah,
what
I
role
hired
did
the
they
elder
play?
as a focus group member. Yeah, he was
Oh, what's
11
that?
by the time I had a draft. So I said to him, okay, you and your 5 pals, I'm going to give you each a copy of this, and you have to fill in a questionnaire at the back. Give me feedback. And then I'll pay you $50 for a bookshop, you know?
So not even $50, but $50 for books.
Books. Yeah. I didn't want them to waste it on something like non-books.
What did you learn from them?
I learned I should phrase my questions carefully because I had written, would you like to go to live with the lotteries? And one of them took me literally and he wrote it up like a panicky way. You know, no, I'm happy with my own family. Thank you very much. So don't scare the children is what I learned. Yeah. I learned that they weren't bothered by the fact that they didn't understand some of the words. I learned that the older children, like 11 or 12, they all liked Brian the 4-year-old best, which goes counter to the kind of strong convention in children's fiction that children are always wanting to read about characters who are 2 or 3 years older than them. So I learned that they were very unfazed by some of the oddities of the lotteries demographically or subjects that mightn't have come up before. They were very relaxed about that and they really concentrated on key things like, you know, will Sumac get her bedroom back, you know? Will she find somewhere else for her grandfather to live?
How does that impact the way you write the book or you edit the book?
It didn't cause me to do any massive rewrites, but a bit of tinkering, certainly. Yeah. And they all complained that there were too many characters at first. So my editor came up with a brilliant, very Canadian solution that half of them would stay on at summer camp for a week longer. So we'd delay their re-entry to the household.
It's very functional. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
It's been gas.
We've got one last song from Barenaked Ladies and the Persuasions for you when Q returns. We're going to leave you today with another collaboration from Barenaked Ladies and the Persuasions. Remember, for more performances, uncut interviews, full episodes of the Q television program, pay us a visit at cbc.ca/Q. I'm Tom Power. Later on.
Once upon a time, everything was fine. Now I feel like I'm at the back of the line. Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck. Hey, where did you go? Was I too fast or slow? Am I just somebody that you used to know? Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck.
When I'm feeling blue, I pick up a shoe, pretend it's a telephone and that I'm talking to you.
Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck. Because the doctor calls and the lawyer calls, but you don't call me, no you don't call me anymore. Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck. I heard you got a rat-tat-tat tattoo on your back. Someone told me about that. I wanna get us back on track. Don't treat me like that. Don't tease me like that. The Dollarama, with the Dalai Lama, you can buy a deck of cards, but you can't buy good karma. Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck. No, 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 no. Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck. No, 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 no. Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck. To the bottom of the deck.
Don't shuffle me back. Don't shuffle me back.
Don't shuffle me back to the bottom of the deck.
Don't shuffle me back. Don't shuffle me back.
The doctor calls, the lawyer calls, but you don't call me. No, you don't call me anymore.